So we're moving into the seventh house, the house of Libra, ruled by Venus, so the goddess of beauty, all things beautiful and balanced, and ruled by the element air. So here we are on the zodiacal wheel, right? And now we've just sort of traveled all the way through this sort of earthly realm, and now we're going to get into this upper crest of the chart, right? The upper portion of the wheel, which has a lot more to do with kind of how we're projecting out either towards another person and also sometimes the inner world of the psyche, and we'll kind of see that as it goes. So you can see here it says social contracts and partnerships. So this is very much one-to-one relationships. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be romantic or sort of any sort of sexual connotation. A lot of times that is this placement. It's also sort of union and marriage. But right, we can also have very intimate relationships with our friends in sort of different projects or work environments, but essentially it's one-to-one. So we're not dealing with, say, the collective, which is the 11th house, right? Which is really the greater community. And we're also, here in this third house where it's more of like our siblings and our family construct, also a bit of that in the fourth house, right? It's very much one-to-one contracts or relationships, but also contracts. So we don't have anyone in particular in this group that has the Aries Jupiter in this seventh house. We'll go through the teachings from the astrology book in just a moment, but what I was thinking that could be helpful for this group is those of you that we talked about in the very beginning that have this Aries ascendant or the first house is in Aries. This is a good meditation as well, to look across the chart in sort of the opposition of what is happening over here in this seventh house. What can we sort of see in the seventh house that could maybe help bring a little bit of equilibrium to the first house situation? Because maybe that first house is so much about the self, right? The self-orientation, the self-confidence. And of course, if we're a bit out of balance, we're leaning a bit more into like the selfish part of our nature. So we can look to that seventh house to see, who are the partners in our lives right now, who are the people that are, really are kind of one-to-one relationships that are helping us to stay a bit maybe humble or a bit more balanced or just a bit more in check. There could also be a lot of magnetism coming into your life during this time, and it might be good to, have some trusted people where you can feel like you can have those intimate relationships where you can be very safe in sharing your experiences and what you're perceiving and what you're feeling. So a friend of mine who is an active astrologer, he's always saying, to go to the opposite house, go to the opposite sign, and essentially any sort of struggle that you might be having, the remedy is going to be there. It's also a mystery, but it will be there. So let's see here. Jupiter in the seventh house. During this period, your intimate one-to-one encounters with other people can show you aspects of yourself and of the world around you. By and large, this transit favors the formation and maintenance of all kinds of partnerships, including marriage. Although this transit by itself does not especially indicate marriage, it does make a marriage work very well at this time. So what he's hinting to there is that there needs to be other things happening in the chart for that marriage alignment to happen, not just because Jupiter is in that seventh house. During this transit, you will encounter people who can help you out in various ways. You approach all relationships with the idea that you and the other person should help each other. Mutual benefit. So we have the scales for Libra, right? So we're constantly trying to find that, I guess you could say, reciprocity in the relationship, that balance and harmony. You are not inclined to go it alone now. You would be well advised not to. You very much need another person's assistance, not because you are weak are a weak individual, but because the other person fulfills your individuality. And what that can tell us about those of us with the Aries rising, the Aries first house, is that really this is your time to do a lot of the work on your own, right? And to hold a lot of the energy on your own. This is also a good time to call in a professional for any kind of assistance, especially a lawyer, but also a doctor or other consultant, as well as personal counselors. If you have to go to court at this time, especially in a civil suit, the outcome should be favorable, although it is important to make sure that you have every angle covered. So Libra is also justice, right? Fairness and justice. So any sort of contracts that are happening, any sort of negotiations, there's going to be a lot of energy to support oneself here with a positive outcome. However, don't take this transit for granted, for you might overlook some detail that could trip you up. Also, don't try to get more than you're due, nor overestimate what you are to get. That could get you into trouble. As with every other Jupiter transit, this one requires a certain amount of moderation in order to get the most out of it. Since Jupiter refers to foreign places and persons, this transit could indicate a partnership or close relationship with a foreigner, or it could indicate a relationship with someone whose background is sufficiently different from yours that you have to expand your views and your understanding of the world simply to deal with him or her. And I found this little nugget to be like the sort of nugget when we think of relationships, because I think a lot of times we want to be in this sort of intimate relationship, intimate partnership, and then we get in it and we don't, we didn't realize that we are signing up to maybe be a little bit challenged, right? That our perspective, essentially we're meeting these other people to help us to grow and to expand, right? And sometimes that growth and that expansion, it can be very difficult, right? Because we are kind of set in our ways and our culturing or in our perspectives and views. So with Jupiter in this house, right, it's really giving us that opportunity, bringing people into our lives that are very different than us or carry different perspectives so that we can grow. Any intimate relationship at this time will certainly have a consciousness expanding effect upon you. In other words, the relationship won't permit you to continue in a narrow frame of reference. Again, right? Mind expanding, heart expanding. If you marry under this influence, your partner is likely to be a slightly older person who has established himself or herself in the world. Your respect for this person is one of the main factors that attracts you. This is a sign of a person more experienced than yourself. So I think it could be age. I think also just being around people in an intimate partnership, right? This could even be like a new work relationship, but it's one-on-one, and it's like there's a bit of a mentorship there. You're acknowledging that this other person is much more established, and you also have gifts to give to them, right? There's something, probably that fifth house light, and then that sixth house like work ethic, whatever that work is, and those systems and that sense of discipline, and then moving that into the seventh house. Like, you are a treasure, but also you're here to learn, right? Learn, grow, and expand. So you can come into a nice tall seat.